The Corte Castellana, situated in Spain in the year 1492, the Italian navigator Christopher Columbus convinces the King Fernando de Aragon and the Queen Isabel de Castilla to sponsor his voyage to India by sailing west in exchange for 10% of the profit obtained from the journey. The contract was made up between Christopher Columbus and the King and Queen of Spain in 1492. 10% of profit for Christopher Columbus. In August 1492, Christopher Columbus leaves the Spanish port of Palos. Columbus arrives to Watling Island in the Caribbean on October 12, 1492. He gives thanks to San Salvador for his salvation and calls the land San Salvador. This day is known as Columbus Day. On the 24th of December 1492, Columbus's crew leaves San Salvador to go back to Spain, but the Santa Maria gets shipwrecked just off the coast of Hispaniola, today's Dominican Republic and Haiti Islands. Columbus decides to use the wood to make a fort on the island, and he calls it La Navidad. In 1494, 2 years after Columbus arrived to San Salvador, Isabel and Fernando of Spain signed the Treaty of Tordesillas that divided South America into the Spanish and Portuguese colonies. This treaty also guaranteed the King of Portugal, Juan II of Portugal, that the Spanish wouldn't interfere in their African route trade, El Cabo de la Buena Esperanza. The Portuguese region is today Brazil. That was discovered by Pedro Álvarez Cabral on behalf of Portugal. In 1507, the cartographer Martin Waldseemüller made the first precise world map, and on it he called the new continent America in honor of Amerigo Vespucci. Amerigo Vespucci declared in his book Mundus Novus that Christopher Columbus was wrong for considering the new discovered land India. European conquest of America. In Europe, they soon realized that Columbus had in fact discovered the New World, the continents of the North and South America. Soon settlers from Europe would come to colonize the New World. North America was chiefly colonized by 4 European countries: England, France, Spain, and Holland. John Cabot arrived to Canada, Terra Nova, in 1497 on behalf of England, that was ruled by King Henry VII. North America was chiefly colonized by 4 European countries: England, France, Spain, and Holland. In 1585, Sir Walter Raleigh founded the first English colony and named it Virginia. The state of Virginia was named in honor of Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen. Over time, England came to dominate the east coast of North America because they were sending many more colonists than other countries. By 1630, the 13 original colonies had been formed under British control. The Hudson River is named after Henry Hudson, an English explorer that sailed for the Dutch East India Company, and who explored it in 1609, and after whom Canada's Hudson Bay is also named. The Dutch governor formerly purchased Manhattan, New York, for goods valued at 60 guilders, worth $24, from the local tribe from which it derives its name. The colony of New Netherland was established by the Dutch West India Company in 1624 and grew to encompass all of the present-day New York City and its outskirts. The area that Holland colonized, now called New York and Pennsylvania, was taken over by the British. The British Crown had lost interest in ruling the colonies, so the 13 colonies became semi-autonomous, self-ruling with their own elected governments until 1750. The original 13 colonies. In America, there was territorial war between Great Britain and France. Britain was at war with France and needed money, so the British began to heavily tax the colonies and sent British governors and soldiers to take control. Two of these taxes were on stamps and tea. The colonists rebelled against taxes such as taxes on tea and stamps. One major protest was the Boston Tea Party of 1773. Colonists disguised as Indians, and they took over an English ship full of tea and threw the tea into the Boston harbor as a protest against the taxes. (1775) conquered Lexington, Massachusetts. The Revolutionary War, or the War for Independence, began in April 1775 in Concord, Lexington, Massachusetts, when the British forces tried to disarm the colonial militias. We can consider that the main causes of the war were guns and taxes. The colonists formed their own government, the Continental Congress, originally made in New York City, then the capital of the colonial government. However, the British Navy quickly conquered and took over New York, so the colonial government relocated to Philadelphia, where the Declaration of Independence was issued. On July 4, 1776, the General George Washington was appointed commander of the colonial army. George Washington's first victory came at Valley Forge in December, when Washington led his army across the Delaware River at midnight during a snowstorm and captured 500 Hessians, German mercenaries, and 1,000 guns. The war continued until the final victory of the colonial army at Yorktown on October of 1881, when the British commander, General Cornwallis, surrendered his army to George Washington. The War for Independence formally concluded in September of 1783 with the Treaty of Paris, where Britain officially recognized the independence of the colonies. The Treaty of Paris, signed in Paris by representatives of King George III of Great Britain and representatives of the United States of America in September in 1783, and it ended the American Revolutionary Wars. The country's major founding fathers participated, including George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson, who had written the Declaration of Independence. The result was that the United States became a federal republic with an elected president and Congress. However, each state would have its own governor and state assembly and make their own laws and policies. After the USA's independence, the northern states had mainly industrial economies, while the southern states were mainly agricultural. The land in the south was good for growing cotton, sugar, and tobacco, so large plantations developed in the south. They utilized slaves taken from Africa as cheap labor on the plantations. The northern climate was not suitable for plantations, so there were few slaves there. European colonies in Africa from which slaves were stolen and sold to southern states of the USA, where they were forced to work on plantations. There were presidential elections in 1860 between John Breckinridge, Democrat, and Abraham Lincoln, Republican, that were won by Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln proposed to abolish slavery. Abraham Lincoln won the presidential elections of 1860 and declared a law called Emancipation Proclamation, which obliged slave owners to free all slaves in 1863. The South didn't agree with the Emancipation Proclamation, and they declared independence from the USA and formed a new country that was called the Confederate States of America. The capital city of the Confederate States of America was Montgomery of Alabama, and their president was Jefferson Davis. The USA didn't agree with this measure by the South, and the war was initiated between the North and the South. The Confederate States of America only existed during the Civil War from 1861 to 1864. The Union Army of Grant defeated the Confederate Army of Lee, and they signed surrender in Virginia 1865. Ulysses S. Grant, he led the Union in Civil War, capturing Vicksburg in 1863 and Richmond 1865. He later became President of the USA from 1869 to 1877. Robert E. Lee, General Commander of the Confederate Army. After 4 years of fighting, the North won the war. The troublesome negative conflict has cast a shadow on the successes of America ever since. The country had to find ways to heal the wounds of war during construction, which fell to political and innermost values of whites in the South and the North.